Chilling secrets exposed. The sinister rules haunting our Antarctic recruits in the cursed outpost. Daniel stood, in the frigid winds of the Antarctic, breath fogging in the icy air, staring at the bleak outpost that loomed before him like a haunted relic of a forgotten era. This place, cloaked in relentless snow and darkness, held secrets that twisted in the shadows. He had thought this move would give his family a fresh start, a quiet life far from the demons of their past. Little did he know, danger lurked not only in the white wasteland but within the very walls of the outpost. From the moment he arrived, he sensed something was amiss. The other recruits whispered amongst themselves, eyes darting with paranoia. The atmosphere was thick with an unspoken terror, an awareness that danger hovered just at the edge of perception. Rumors of accidents rumbled through the hallways, sharp as ice shards. Equipment going haywire, recruits vanishing without a trace. It was all too much. Daniel tried to shake it off. He had to stay focused on his family, Sarah and little Ethan. They believed in him. But the creeping dread was like a cold hand tightening around his heart. One evening, alone in his cramped quarters, Daniel stumbled upon an encrypted message embedded within the Outpost's terminal. The rules, it whispered to him in a cold digital voice, sending shivers racing down his spine. The guidelines spoke of chilling directives that preyed on the heart's darkness, encouraging betrayal and moral decay amongst the recruits. Who had written it? Why were they following it? His mind raced, a storm of questions and fears swirling. He was now trapped in something far deeper than he realized. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The blizzards outside raged with more fury. It was like nature itself conspired against him. The winds howled mournfully, mimicking the chaos brewing within Daniel's mind. The outpost fell prey to impenetrable darkness at night, punctuated only by the flickering lights that cast long, sinister shadows across the walls. Desperate dreams of home tormented him. Sarah's face. Ethan's laughter faded into painful memories, replaced by the whispers in the corridors. Where was everyone? Why did they avoid eye contact? The unspoken rules twisted the very fabric of camaraderie, and each day Daniel felt more isolated. He sought to complete his assignments in haste. Yet the more he pushed, the more he sensed eyes upon him, watching, waiting. Then came the accidents, one close call after another. Equipment malfunction that left him stranded in sub-zero temperatures. A coworker falling silent on a routine patrol. One moment he was in his bunker. The next, chaos erupted. The dread mounted as he narrowly escaped being trapped in a room where the lights flickered. He looked around and found faces twisted with dark secrets. His fellow recruits wore masks, and under those masks, the hollow eyes revealed the scariest truths. Just as panic took hold, a call came through in the dead of night. It was Sarah, her voice tremulous, shaking through the wires like broken glass. "Daniel," she whispered urgently, "I think someone has been watching us. A man, he knows about your work." Those words twisted around Daniel's mind like barbed wire. Could he protect his family from the lunacy surrounding him? What kind of monster concealed itself behind the guise of a trusted neighbor? In that moment, with fears growing deeper like the snow drifts outside, Daniel realized he wasn't just battling against the unforgiving blizzard or the outpost's chilling whispers. He was fighting against shadows that threatened to invade the life he had tried so hard to build. And as the winds howled louder, a thought crept through his mind. Perhaps the greatest danger came not just from the desolation of Antarctica, but from those he had believed were allies. Could he uncover the truth about the rules before it swallowed him whole? Just as despair loomed, the blizzard shrieked outside, and Daniel knew this was just the beginning. The next morning brought little relief. Daniel rubbed tired eyes and ached in ways he hadn't thought possible. He had barely slept, haunted by the visions of fading laughter and shadows lurking just out of sight. The terminal hum echoed in his mind, whispering the rules that had set the darkness in motion. As he stepped outside, the biting wind wrapped around him like a vice, and the stark whiteness of the endless snow made him squint. The drifting flakes fell like whispered secrets, covering everything in silence. He glanced at the main building, its walls growing ominously closer with the flurry of white. The mood among the recruits was thicker than the frost. Eyes were downcast. Conversations faded out when he approached. The pact they shared, if it ever existed, was unraveling. Instead, Daniel found only flickers of fear and doubt. Just as he turned to head inside, a figure loomed in the distance, shrouded in the storm, watching. Daniel's heart raced as he took a few steps toward him, desperate to break through the veil of anxiety. "Hey, who are you?" he shouted, but the wind carried his words away, leaving only an unsettling silence. The figure shifted, then turned and vanished into the swirling snow as quickly as he appeared. Daniel's stomach twisted. Who was he? What did he want? He hurried inside, desperately seeking comfort in the warmth of the outpost's corridors. The flickering lights filled the space with an eerie ambience. Every shadow felt alive, and every creak of the floorboards heightened his senses. Scrolling through the terminal, he rapidly reviewed the guidelines again, something nagging at him to make sense of it all. It led him down a dark rabbit hole, a maze of rules and unspoken truths that clawed at his inner turmoil. Suddenly, a loud noise shocking him from his thoughts, a shout from down the hall. Clenching his fists, Daniel rushed toward the source, heart hammering in his chest. In the common room, an unruly group of recruits surrounded a young man on the floor. Blood trickled from a gash on his head as he struggled to rise. "We didn't mean it," one of them yelled, panic bleeding through his words. "Get away from him," Daniel barked, stepping closer, ready to defend the fallen recruit. But the faces around him twisted in fear, as if they were more afraid of him than the situation at hand. "He was breaking the rules, Daniel," one of the recruits shouted, as if that justified the cruelty. "We had to teach him a lesson." Daniel felt a chill seep through him. These rules were poisoning not just their minds but their very souls. Could he really trust anyone here? The group shifted uneasily, and Daniel caught sight of the young man on the floor, eyes wide and frail, filled with unspoken truths that begged for escape. In that moment, the darkness of the outpost encroached upon him. Despair curled in the corners of his heart. Would he become one of them? Feeling dizzy, Daniel stepped back, hands trembling as he processed the gruesome display. Before he could retreat, someone gripped his arm. It was Saeed, a phlegmatic recruit always on the edge. "You have to understand," he hissed, his breath fogging in the cold air. "Staying alive here means following the rules. Fight or be fought." The weight of Saeed's words crashed down on him. Fear jogged his thoughts. Would he sacrifice his morals and love for survival? As he pulled away, determined to find answers, Daniel immediately noticed it felt colder. A burst of terror shot through him. He spun around, searching the faces for that one familiar figure, the figure he had seen earlier. He thought his mind was playing tricks, but then he saw him again, a shadow lurking outside. "Daniel!" Saeed's voice snapped him back. But when Daniel turned back, he was alone. The outside was an abyss, a blizzard hiding nightmares. The figure was gone, but the feeling that too familiar gaze still bore down on him like an icy dagger that he needed to get to Sarah. As Daniel stumbled through the frost-laden hall, dread tightened like a chain around his throat. He dialed her number, praying for a connection, hoping she would answer. But only silence greeted him, and then came the voice, echoing like a distant specter. "Maybe you should have followed the rules." What had Daniel just unleashed? Would the rules draw him deeper into the abyss, or would they finally lead him to the truth? Daniel's pulse quickened, drowning out the mechanical whir of the terminal. Panic gnawed at the edges of his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that some unseen force was watching, waiting. He had to find Sarah. He had to escape this hell. His feet moved almost of their own accord, leading him down the hall, past flickering light bulbs that cast erratic shadows on walls stained with time and unease. Each step felt heavier as dread settled deep in his stomach. Were there even any rules left to follow, or had they all been twisted and perverted into something vile? The common room was now empty, the space eerily quiet, but fear hung in the air like fog, thick and suffocating. Daniel pressed forward, heart racing, desperate to find anyone who could help. But the faces he encountered were a mask of indifference, or worse, hostility. It hit him like a slap. He was on his own. He tore down another corridor, intent on making sense of the madness, thoughts spiraling around like a tempest. Get it together, he muttered under his breath. The rules were his only lifeline, weren't they? But the question loomed. Were they meant to protect him or ensnare him? Turning a corner, he froze. At the end of the hall, the figure reappeared. This time, Daniel could make out details: the gaunt body, the too large coat billowing against the wind that somehow seeped into the halls. The specter turned slowly, revealing hollow eyes that seemed to bore into Daniel's soul. Who are you?" Daniel managed, his voice trembling. The words felt clumsy, inadequate against the chill creeping back into his bones. The figure raised a finger, pointing towards the door. Daniel's heart thudded in confusion. Was this a warning? An invitation? Panic gripped him as he hesitated. What if this was a trap, another cruel game the recruits were forced to play? His instincts screamed for him to run. Yet the pull of curiosity was stronger than fear, so he inched closer. The figure stood still, its form wavering like a mirage. Just as he reached out, a low growl reverberated through the air, cutting the silence. Daniel stepped back, glancing over his shoulder, scanning for an exit. The sensation of being prey bore down on him, paralyzing his thoughts. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from within the common room behind him. A surge of adrenaline propelled him forward. He burst through the doorway, breath hitching at the scene before him. The recruits had turned on one another, fighting violently, fueled by paranoia and rage. "Stop it," he shouted, trying to restore sanity. But his voice fell on deaf ears as his heart raced. They didn't hear him. They couldn't. The atmosphere buzzed with rage thick enough to choke on. "Rules. We have to follow the rules." One of them screamed, but it was lost in the chaos. Blood splattered like a chaotic painting against the white walls. Daniel felt the walls of reality closing in. He recoiled, trapped in the eye of a storm, fists swinging, bodies colliding. The rules, which he thought were meant to unite them, were tearing them apart instead. With every slap of flesh upon flesh, another fragment of their humanity was lost. "Daniel!" Said's voice broke through, filled with panic and urgency. "We need to act before it's all irreversible." An invisible dread curled around Daniel's throat. What was left to act upon? What if he attacked the wrong person? But then, amidst the bedlam, he felt a tug, a whisper of urgency, a vision of Sarah, clear against the chaos. His mission crystallized. "I'm done with this," he yelled, stepping back from the fight. "This isn't survival. It's slaughter. We need to stick together." But would they listen? He cast a desperate glance behind him, half expecting to see the figure again, offering solace or insight. But the blizzard at the window consumed the world outside, leaving only this horror cave they now called home. Silence loomed for a split second before the group turned their eyes toward Daniel, venomous yet curious, as if his expression could unveil a forgotten truth. "What do you know?" Said's voice was low, accusatory. "Enough." Then came the voice again, still echoing. "Maybe you should have followed the rules." Daniel's heart thumped. Was there still a chance to manifest the truth? But as he opened his mouth to respond, the ground trembled, a thunderous crack from outside that made the walls shudder. Something had been awakened. What was waiting out there in the blizzard, and could anything save them now? The tremor reverberated through the room, sending bodies tumbling into one another like autumn leaves caught in a tempest. Daniel's heart raced as fear pooled like ice in his veins. It felt as if the very foundation of their world had started to splinter. The recruits stilled, confusion etching their faces, seething rage replaced by a shared dread. It was as if the chaos had whispered a chilling command, one that clawed at their throats and silenced their tongues. "Did you feel that?" Saeed whispered, eyes darting to the window, where the howling wind painted a curtain of white across the glass. What was it? Someone murmured, breathless, their gaze flickering around the room. I don't know. Whatever it is, we need to get out of here. A recruit called out, panic surfacing again like an unwelcome guest. No, Daniel interjected, voice steady yet strained. We can't just run blindly. We need to strategize. We can't let fear rule us. But biting glares shot back, revealing a mixture of disbelief and loss of sanity. The walls seemed to close in, tangible but malevolent, constricting the air. Each second ticked by like a relentless drumbeat heralding disaster. That S when it happened. The door slammed shut with a force that rattled the very room, plunging them into eerie darkness, only the dim light above providing a weak barrier against the thickening shadows. A suffocating silence gripped their hearts. The faint sound of breath felt like a countdown. Something scratched at the door long, anguished grating, as if a beast was trying to claw its way in. Shivers cascaded down Daniel's spine. What is out there? He whispered, drawing the recruits closer, forming a huddle of fear and desperation. What if it's the wind? Someone suggested, but their voice held little conviction. No wind sounds like that, Saeed replied sharply, eyes narrowing as he strained to listen. This place, it's not merely haunted by ghosts. It's twisted, sinister. Daniel took a tentative step toward the door, the violent scratching turning into relentless pounding. Each thud echoed in time with his heartbeat. He pressed his ear against the wood, trying to discern some understanding of the horror waiting beyond. And then he heard it, a low growl mixed with distorted whispers. The rules, it seemed, had brought them to this moment. Each one of them a pawn in a game far older than they realized. This isn't just about survival anymore, Daniel said, his voice trembling. He turned to face the others, urgency flaring in his eyes. We have to uncover the truth behind this place, behind the rules they've forced upon us. It's our only chance, or it could lead us straight to our doom, shouted another recruit, desperation flashing across their face. But Daniel stood firm, feeling a flicker of hope igniting within him. We've lost ourselves to paranoia. If we keep blindly following their rules, we're signing our own death warrant. Suddenly, the window shattered, sending fragments of glass flying like deadly shrapnel. Fear erupted as storm winds howled into the room, swirling chaos around them. Get down, Saeed yelled, grabbing Daniel as they both ducked behind a nearby table. The others scattered, screams mingling with the rushing air that filled the confines of their prison. Where is Sarah? Daniel shouted over the din, panic erupting within him again. She could be out there. I don't know. We can't focus on her right now, Saeed shouted back. We need to figure out how to survive this. Another crash echoed through the building, a cacophony of destruction that screamed for blood. The very walls sheared away sanity, a grotesque testament to the horrors that lay in wait. A shadow loomed at the edge of visibility, slick and slithering, dark against the blizzard's white fury. Daniel felt his heart leap into his throat. Stay close, he commanded, reaching out for Saeed. But the figure lunged forward, a mass of aimless torment, and a scream tore through the air, unearthly and primal, trapped between the oncoming entity and the mindless chaos of his fellow recruits. Daniel realized the fight for survival had only just begun. What would emerge from the snowstorm, and was there a path that could save them, or had they awakened something they should never have disturbed? The howling wind grew louder, a banshee lament echoing through the gaping wound where the window had once stood. Daniel's heart pounded like a war drum. The looming figure became clearer, growing in menace as it moved. Tentacles danced in the blizzard-tinged shadows, beckoning, demanding attention. Saeed pulled Daniel back, his eyes glimmering with terror. We have to move, now. But the others remained rooted, frozen by fear as the figure advanced, its form shifting and morphing, a grotesque caricature of past horrors beneath swirling layers of white. Daniel felt bile rise in his throat. This wasn't some twisted prank. They were in the clutches of a nightmare. Fight or flee, Daniel shouted, clenching his fists tightly. We can't die here. The recruits suddenly jolted awake, fear igniting within them. Without hesitation, Daniel reached for a nearby chair and lifted it high. "We have to fight back." Another crash erupted, loud and sickening. The creature shrieked, its voice piercing through the cacophony like a knife. It slashed its way further into the room, shards of ice and darkness swirling around it. "Get the door!" Someone screamed, rushing towards it. But the door, once a sturdy bulwark, now mocked them, bending inward as if it were a living thing willing to yield to the terror outside but unwilling to grant any means of escape. "Where is Sarah?" Daniel's voice cracked, desperation crawling into his bones. The fear was already turning them against one another. "I can't worry about her," Saeed snapped, his hands trembling as he prepared for whatever lurked beyond the door. "You want to look for her? You do it." The swirling chaos intensified. Daniel's grip on the chair tightened, his knuckles whitening as shadows closed in. They were surrounded. This was about more than survival. It was primal. It was rage. It was the fraying threads of sanity being pulled apart by answers they never unveiled. "Whatever you are, you one take us," Daniel roared, thrusting the chair towards the creeping darkness. "You think we'll just roll over and die?" The figure halted, its mass flickering as if assessing him. It paused, then leaned closer, a maw that seemed to unfurl, revealing raw emptiness tinged with ethereal whispers that clawed at Daniel's mind. "You're too late." It hissed, the words heavy with ancient regret. "The truth is buried here, and it shall remain." In that fleeting moment, a sliver of clarity struck Daniel like lightning. The whispers weren't just the creature-s, they were echoes of previous recruits, meshed with regret and despair, fragments of their souls trapped in a continuous cycle of horror. "I'm done with this," Daniel screamed, lobbing the chair toward the monstrous entity. It shattered with a splintering crack, and something within the creature twisted violently, a flicker of pain igniting in its darkness. The recruits finally burst free from their stupor. "We fight together. No more rules," Saeed shouted, uncertainty now suffused with a desperate rallying cry. Daniel had ignited a spark. Eyes went wide, determination surged. They charged into the fray, fists and resolve raised, uniting against the consuming despair that cloaked their prison. But just as they pressed forward, the entity erupted, an outburst of cold chaos sending them sprawling. The bitter wind slipped through them like icy fingers, and the whispers grew louder, more frantic. "Look out!" Someone bellowed too late. A tentacle lashed out, sending Daniel crashing into a wall. Everything spun. The veil of darkness thickened, narrowing around them. Panic erupted anew as they scrambled on the floor, screams blending into shrieks of chaos and horror. "No, keep fighting," Daniel grunted, forcing himself upright. But as he grasped at the shadows, claws reaching for him, his fingers brushed against the broken remnants of the window. The storm outside laughed at their foolishness. With a final, desperate lunge, Daniel aimed for the shattered glass, hoping for liberation or annihilation. Whichever came first. In that moment, the storm outside froze, a pregnant pause before unleashing its fury anew. The darkness closed in, and as hope dimmed, they faced the most terrifying question of all. How could they fight a horror born from their very secrets? What hidden truths lay buried in the depths of this cursed outpost, and would they uncover them before it was too late? The icy wind howled like a pack of wolves, filling the room with an oppressive weight that choked their breaths. Daniel's heart raced as he managed to rise, still reeling from the impact. The chaos around him surged like a tidal wave. He fought the vertigo and focused, scanning the flickering shadows that danced mockingly against the walls. "Get up, don't give in," he shouted, his own voice barely cutting through the howling terror. He reached for another chair but found it splintered and useless. Frantic eyes darted around the room, reflecting the shifting nightmare as the creature advanced, each pulsing movement echoing their collective dread. Saeed's eyes flickered with wild despair. "We can't hide. We can't fight this." He stumbled towards the corner, hands grasping nervously at the air, searching for support. Daniel felt anger at Saeed's defeatism burn in his chest. "We can't give up," he yelled, causing the recruits to momentarily turn back to his fiery determination. The figure laughed, an echoing sound that chilled their flesh. "You think you can escape the truth? It's deeper than you know." It slithered closer, tentacles unfurling, each one revealing more of the darkness within. The whispers intensified, now distinctly recognizable, the cracking voices of those whom the creature had consumed, remnants of shattered dreams and broken spirits. Failure, betrayal, they echoed through Daniel's mind, blending agony with understanding. They were not just recruits. They were past hunters, trapped in this relentless loop. "Sarah," Daniel shouted again, standing tall in a moment of clarity. "We have to find her." "Shut up. Can't you see it's too late?" Saeed screamed back, his voice trembling with despair. But that fear ignited something else in Daniel. He could feel it coiling tight inside him, resolve mixed with panic. "Together," Daniel beckoned, his words fierce. "We fight for her." He looked around, meeting the eyes of a few others who were still gripped by fear, anchored by the despair that wrapped around them like barbed wire. He could see the flickers of recognition. They knew they had to act. With a collective spurt of adrenaline, Daniel's voice rose above the din. "We push back. We take that thing down." They surged forward, a ragtag team of bodies fighting against the lifeless weight of impending doom. As they came together, an almost electric current connected them, helping them push past their individual fears. They charged at the black mass. One recruit pointed toward the far wall where shadows shifted ominously. "Go. Use the light. Break the dark." No one paused, their adrenaline pumping like raw electricity. Daniel grabbed the nearest light source, a flashlight, and shone it straight into the creature's depthless eyes. It shrieked, a horrific sound that clawed at their ears, but the light held it back momentarily. "Keep pushing," Daniel shouted, feeling the surge of hope, even as panic threatened to envelop them once more. But then cracks began to form in the walls. At first it was subtle, a tiny creak here, a minute shift there. But soon, fractures spiderwebbed across the ice that held their sanctuary. They watched in horror as the foundation groaned under the weight of the creature's presence, fragments of their escape slipping away like grains of sand. "Something's wrong." One cried, panic rising like a suffocating fog. "We're gonna get swallowed by it." Another shouted, breathless, in that frantic moment, the ground shook violently, almost knocking them off their feet. The creature stilled as if sensing a shift in its domain, a power struggle between it and the encroaching truth buried in the ice. "What if we brought it here?" Saeed screamed, eyes wide with fright. What if it feeds on our darkness?" An icy realization gripped Daniel. Their fear, despair, and regrets were a part of the dark force that bound them. "Then we face it," Daniel thundered, unwilling to back down. Their inner demons had become flesh and shadow, but they could confront them head-on. The air thickened with urgency as they tightened their formation, closing in on the creature that had preyed on them for far too long. The walls began to crack louder, the sound echoing like a countdown ticking down to calamity. Daniel hesitated, catching his breath, the weight of the moment crashing down on him. Truths, concealed beneath layers of snow and lies, threatened to unearth itself. "What do we really know about each other?" The creature surged forward again, the air cloying with despair and tumult. And as the surrounding shadows crept nearer, Daniel knew one thing for certain: they needed to confront the darkness within, or be consumed by it entirely. What horrors would they reveal? Could they survive, or would the truth bury them all, once and for all? The light from the flashlight cut a narrow path through the dim air, illuminating the creature's grotesque form as it recoiled from its own shadow. Its tentacles twisted violently, punctuating the silence with a sound like cracking ice, and Daniel felt bile rise in his throat. They had never seen anything so horrifying. "Push against it," he yelled, his voice echoing against the walls, clutching the hope that still flickered in his chest. "We're stronger than it." But the recruits hesitated, fear creeping back into their hearts. They looked at him, eyes wild, breaths shallow. The shadows around them pulsed as if alive, whispering secrets that slithered into their minds. "Look inside," One recruit shouted, her voice breaking. What if we become part of it? Like them? Daniel's heart sank. The faces of the consumed flickered in his mind. Lost, hopeless, twisted reminders of what lay ahead if they failed. We don't have to be like them. We have each other. Remember Sarah. The name hung in the air like a grisly omen, and a flash of determination lit up the room. Saeed stepped forward, trembling, but steadied himself against the backdrop of chaos. She was strong. We owe it to her to fight. The ground trembled beneath their feet, an angry growl echoing like thunder through the walls. The cracks widened, revealing the dark void beneath a chasm that could swallow them whole. Back, everyone, back, Daniel shouted, fear crawling up his spine. But before they could retreat, the creature lunged forward, its form morphing in a flash. One tentacle struck out, whipping through the air like a dark lightning bolt, and a recruit screamed as it lashed at her. Watch out, Saeed shouted. The flashlight beam danced erratically, unsure of where to point as panic set in. The creature shrieked again, drowning out their fear. The chilling sound filled their lungs with ice. The walls began to collapse, echoing their impending doom. Make a gap. We need to escape, Daniel yelled, fighting against the rising tide of desperation. Ignoring their terror, they formed a line. Each recruit knotted together by fear and determination. They pushed towards the beast, groping for anything that could turn the tide. The air thrummed, an electric hum that danced from heart to heart, tethering them as one. With newfound resolve, one recruit aimed the flashlight at the creature once more. Get ready. As they advanced, the light morphed into an arcing beacon, soothing the chaos that gripped Daniel's heart. The creature shrieked and recoiled again, but this time, it was full of rage. The figure pulsated with fury, darkness swirling around it like a vortex. Keep it steady, Daniel urged under his breath, feeling the sweat running down his back, his pulse echoing in time with their breaths. With one last surge, they rushed the creature, light illuminating their trembling faces, revealing the raw emotion swirling behind their eyes. They were afraid, but they weren't lost. They could still reach Sarah. Suddenly, the floor cracked beneath them, sending chills through the group as they stumbled forward. Saeed cried out as he lost his footing, but Daniel snagged his arm, pulling him close just in time to keep him upright. Stay with me, he said, as the darkness swirled, whispering promises of despair. They pressed onward, intent on piercing the veil of shadows that threatened to engulf them. But as they advanced, an ominous voice shattered their resolve, a low chant that rose from the cracks, warping reason and sanity. It spoke not only to them but of them. Weakness, cowardice, betrayal. Daniel felt a cold grip on his mind, a flickering memory scraping at the edges of his consciousness. Were these the things they feared? Could they fall apart? In the moments of confrontation, he realized they would have to confront more than just the creature. Shadows that lived inside their hearts bubbled to the surface, ugly truths that demanded acknowledgement. Fight it, he shouted, voice hoarse, desperation creeping back into his tone. We can beat it. But could they? The creature thrashed, and the walls groaned louder, the shadows edging in closer. With a deafening roar, the creature lunged at them again, an embodiment of their darkest fears. As they stood entrenched in that web of dark truths and echoes of despair, the world around them seemed to shake and shatter. Would their voices be enough to counter the whispers? Or would they surrender to the shadows? The truth was poised to unravel, yet they had to make a choice before the darkness swallowed all hope. What price were they willing to pay for liberation? The air thickened, heavy with dread and the scent of decay. The creature's roar vibrated through Daniel's chest, reverberating against the walls that seemed to pulse with life. Shadows crawled forth, fingers of darkness snaking around their ankles, and Daniel's heart raced, pounding furiously as if desperate to escape. Move, he screamed, but the words barely sliced through the oppressive atmosphere. Terror gripped the recruits tighter now, fear pinching their throats, turning hopeful cries into strangled whispers. They staggered, barely holding onto the light, a flickering flame in an encroaching storm. The creature was a blend of nightmares. Twisted limbs, too many mouths, each screaming in agony and rage. Sarah wouldn't give up. Saeed shouted, shaking. We can't either. Remember, shut up, snapped a recruit, hysteria cracking his voice. What if it finds us like it found her? You're all talking about fighting, but what if we're just feeding it? Daniel felt the surge of panic spiraling, tightening like a noose around his stomach. He locked eyes with Saeed, whose face was pale but fierce. They couldn't fall apart now. The shadows whispered insidiously, tugging at the corners of their minds. You're weak just like her, let it take you, hold on to each other. Focus, Daniel shouted, defiance clinging to his voice. They had to push back against what threatened to unravel them all. With a deep breath, Daniel launched towards the creature, aiming the flashlight like a weapon. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the tentacles as they writhed and recoiled, reacting to the light as if burned. Together, he barked, rallying the recruits. Their hands clasped tightly. They moved as a single entity, a maelstrom of determination and dread. But as they pressed forward, another voice seeped from the cracks, deeper and darker. You will know despair. You will feel loss. You are already sacrificed. That voice slid into their minds like icy water, seeping of hopelessness, memories flooding back. Daniel shrank under the weight of his own guilt, the ghosts of those lost rising up around him, faces twisted in grief. Move, Daniel. What are you doing? Saeed's panicked voice broke through, stirring him. He blinked back the memories, forcing the pain aside. He had to stand firm. The creature lunged again, tentacles flailing in tandem with their rising hopelessness. Darkness swept closer, a void that swallowed the flashlight's beam, twisting the room into a cyclone of panic. Light doesn't matter, another recruit shouted. It's going to swallow us whole. Stay strong. Keep it steady, Daniel yelled, his voice straining against terror. The ground began to tremble, sharp fissures cracking through the floor, sending a tremor of dread up Daniel's spine. He glanced back and saw fear blooming in every pair of eyes, that spark of hope dimming suddenly. A recruit screamed, eyes wide as she stumbled backward into the chasm that opened beneath them, sucking up the very remnants of the light. No, Daniel shouted, lunging forward, but it was too late. She vanished into the abyss. Keep going. He felt wild desperation surge through him. They couldn't hesitate. They had to fight for their lives. The recruits pushed through the chaos, but another scream echoed, twisting Daniel's gut. One by one, they began to fall into shadow, swallowed by despair. We have to face it, Daniel shouted, a stark realization slicing through him. We have to confront our fears, or we'll all be lost. But would they? As the darkness clawed at him, pulling him closer to the brink with every heartbeat, Daniel embraced the terror. If they were truly going to stand united, they had to face their demons, the dread of what failure meant. Together, he shouted again, conviction in his voice, but doubt slithered in like the creeping shadows. What if they were too late? What if the truth waiting below was more terrifying than anyone imagined? The creature loomed, angry and relentless. Daniel and what remained of his team fought, but one question gnawed at the back of his mind. As the shadows gathered, would their spirit be enough to carry them through the storm? Now he whispered, bracing for the worst. Could the light overpower the darkness? Or had they already lost the battle before it began? The darkness writhed, eager to devour every flicker of light that remained. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears, drowning out all sound except the ominous thrum of the creature's rage. It was a cacophony of terror, each note laced with despair. The recruits braced themselves, backs pressed together, their breaths shallow and rapid, conflicted emotions swirling within them: fear, loyalty, guilt. Don't think about what's behind you, Daniel urged, a desperate pitch creeping into his tone. Focus on moving forward. He stepped deeper into the void as the others clung to his determination like a lifeline. The flashlight trembled in his grasp, beam thinning as if weighed down by the heavy shadows encroaching upon them. But shadows weren't the only thing lurking in the darkness. A piercing scream erupted, slicing through the turbulence, echoing off the walls like a dagger through flesh. One recruit stumbled, clutching her mouth in horror as her feet slipped into an icy grip. "It's got me!" she shrieked, tearing at the air as she was pulled backward, dragged toward the pulsating mass. "Jane!" Saeed cried, lunging toward her. But the darkness gaped wide, swallowing her whole. The screams abruptly swallowed into silence. "Keep moving!" Daniel bellowed, choking on the rising bile of despair. They had no choice. They couldn't give in. As they bounded forward, shadows twisted like serpents, entangling themselves around legs, slowing them down, feeding on their scrambling fear. Was this what it felt to rot from the inside out? "Confront it." Saeed echoed Daniel's earlier words, but his voice trembled with uncertainty. "Face what it shows us." Suddenly, the room spun, the very ground collapsing like a broken mirror, reflecting their worst moments. Faceless shadows emerged from the depths, whispering secrets of their past failures, of lost comrades. Each shadow seemed more real than the last. Daniel could see the twisted remnants of memories dancing on the periphery, his brother's laughter, his family's faces morphing into horror. "Stay together," he shouted again, but his voice felt weak, almost dismissive against the symphony of horror unfolding. The recruits formed a tighter circle, hands clasping, their eyes wide, flicking between shadows like lab rats in a maze. "Fight it. Remember why we're here," Daniel urged, hoping against hope that conviction would quell the mounting dread. But as he spoke, doubt gnawed at him. Were they truly strong enough, or were they just meat for the beast that fed on their fears? A roar shot out, remarkable in its intensity. The creature's tentacles lunged, reaching toward them like shadows coming to life. Daniel squeezed his eyes shut, trying to shut out the visions, trying to summon that fleeting hope again. But the memories tore through, clawing at his thoughts with icy fingers. "Daniel, what do we do?" Someone's voice broke through, shaky and fragile. "Embrace the fear," he shouted, suggesting a madness only desperation could birth. "Let it wash over you, then push it back. Remember, we are more than our fears." The shadows surged as if they were a living entity, screaming through the air, blaring insults and accusations. The air cracked like thunder, sending chills racing down Daniel's spine. Outside, he could hear the wind raging against the building, a storm of nature meeting a storm of the mind. And then it hit, the realization that this creature thrived on their despair. The darkness wasn't simply something to fear. It was waiting for them to fall apart. "Then we don't fall apart," Daniel vowed, forcing his voice to stay steady. Together, the recruits echoed, slamming their fists into the ground, as if striking a unison. They might be terrified, but in the depth of that cold darkness, they must stoke the dying embers of courage. The creature reacted violently, senses disturbed, tentacles whipping like furious serpents, seeking to reclaim its prey. If this was a fight for survival, then let it be something more than an echo of their fears. But as they surged, the ground quaked again beneath them, and another figure faded one. Too close this time. Now! Daniel's heart sank as the shadows closed in, like a wolf circling its prey. Would they fight with purpose or shatter into pieces? Dust in the wind? The darkness bore suspicion, lurking just beyond the edge of the flashlight's flicker, and Daniel felt despair whispering in his ear. Would this moment be their last? Overhead, a crack thundered, threatening to bring the entire place crashing down. Something's breaking. We need to go now. Before Daniel could react, the shadows surged forward. Would they escape this void, or were they just in an endless loop of madness? 100 possibilities loomed as the weight of dread pressed heavy on his chest. As they hurtled into the abyss, the question that burned bright was, could they survive the darkness as the world crumbled around them? The screams faded into echoes as darkness enveloped them like a suffocating blanket. Daniel's heart raced, thudding against his ribs like a relentless drum. Everything felt surreal, a whirlwind of fear and desperation. The flickering beam of the flashlight illuminated the creature's monstrous face, and as the last recruit vanished into the shadows, A fierce determination ignited in Daniel's core. There was no turning back. "Stay focused," Daniel shouted as the walls quaked violently. The outpost itself seemed to shiver in fear, threatening to collapse under the weight of their burden. The creature thrashed, its tentacles reaching, hungry for their despair. "We need to confront the darkness together." Together, Saeed echoed, his voice gaining strength, as if Daniel's conviction had sparked something within all of them. The remaining recruits rallied, tightening their grip on one another, defiance gleaming in their eyes. The creature hissed, its breath like ice, laced with the ancient regret of those who had perished before them. Daniel recognized it now. This was not just a physical fight. It was an emotional battle against their own insecurities, regrets, and fears that had festered in the treacherous environment of the outpost. "Everyone has to share one truth," Daniel yelled, with urgency clawing at his throat. "Something we fear, something we've hidden. Let it out." One recruit, trembling, stepped forward. "I'm scared of losing my family," he cried, voice breaking, the honest despair echoing in the air. "I feel lost without them." The shadows shuddered violently, drawn to the rawness of his emotion. Daniel felt it too. It seemed their shared pain was a light illuminating the darkness. "I couldn't save my partner," another recruit shouted, tears streaming down their face. "They were taken from me." With each confession, the creature's form shrank slightly, recoiling as if the light of their vulnerability was burning its insides. "I've betrayed friends before," chimed in Saeed, his jaw clenched. "I thought I could never be trusted again." Daniel nodded, feeling the collective strength growing. Each confession unshackled the burdens they had carried, transforming despair into resolve. "I'm afraid I can't protect my family," Daniel roared over the mounting wind, voice steady and fierce, even as doubt darted in his mind. "But I will do everything I can." The dark figure froze for a moment, as if recoiling in the wake of their confessions, the weight of its power faltering. "This isn't just about stopping it," Daniel urged, locking eyes with each recruit. "It's about breaking free. Let us destroy the chains that bind us." Like a tidal wave, they joined hands and channeled their collective fears into a beautiful ferocity. "Remember why we came here," Daniel cried, energy flowing between them. "We came to find strength in unity, not division." The creature shrieked, and the walls trembled as fractures spread deeper, threatening their very foundation. With a surge of raw emotion, they pressed forward, a unified front against the darkness. "Now!" Daniel shouted, thrusting the flashlight ahead like a beacon. The bright beam sliced through chaotic shadows, illuminating their path. "No one gets left behind," Saeed shouted, face contorted with determination. "We're getters, not takers." Together, the darkness writhed and buckled under their collective defiance, retreating against the blinding light as if it was a living entity, spitting evil and hatred. Then, in their joined voices, they echoed, "We are more than this darkness." As they surged toward the creature, and as they pushed past the cacophony, a spark ignited in the center of Daniel's chest, spreading warmth through the cold ambience. Suddenly, a brilliant flash erupted as Daniel felt the ground tremble beneath them. The creature slammed into the wall, dropping images of twisted memories, and the room shook with a roar that drowned everything out. But they would not fracture. With all the strength they had, they pushed one last time together, and in an explosive moment of light, the creature shrieked one last time, dissolving into a black cloud that sprinkled on the ground like ashes. The chaos settled, and for a heartbeat, silence swallowed the room. Daniel's breath slowed, heart pounding not from terror, but relief. It was over. Outside, the blizzard had calmed, the winds no longer howling like a banshee. Through the fractured walls of the outpost, light streamed in from the dawn, glimmering against the icy remnants of their struggle. Slowly, cautiously, each survivor stepped back, taking deep breaths. They turned to one another, faces filled with disbelief and gratitude. They had faced the darkness and emerged whole, illuminated by their vulnerabilities. "I know it doesn't erase our losses," Daniel said, his voice soft but firm. But we survived together. We can rebuild better, stronger. Their bonds, forged through the crucible of fear and pain, sparkled like the morning sun breaking through the shadows. They were no longer pawns to the rules. They were more than just recruits, they were friends. As they walked outside, snowflakes brushed against their faces like delicate promises of a brighter future. Together, they breathed in the crisp Antarctic air filled with hope, a new beginning beyond the cursed outpost. Sarah Daniel whispered softly, looking to the horizon, "I'll find you." And as the sun broke free of the clouds, illuminating the white expanse, Daniel realized it was not only hope he sought, it was home. Now it was up to them to write a brighter future. Thank you for being part of this journey. If you loved this conclusion, you need to subscribe now for more thrilling stories. Smash that like button now to keep this momentum going, it really matters. Flood the comments with your thoughts and theories. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this rush. Your support means the world. Let us continue this adventure together.